We got one more guest, one more segment here on this February 10th edition of Bang the Book Radio. That is with professional handicapper Kyle Hunter from HunterSportsPicks.com, as well as BetterSportsPicks.com. Kyle, how's it going today, man?
It's going all right, man. I got to tell you, it's been a different last 10 days or so here. I had major surgery on my knee, 6-month recovery I'm looking at, and no pressure on my leg here for 6 weeks. So things are going a little bit slower around here than they have been, trying to get a little bit of form of normalcy back. But fortunately, plays have gone well here lately. Had a 6-1 weekend, so that always helps.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Certainly helps to ease the pain in more than one way. But, continued well wishes to you, man. I know you got a lot of our listeners in your corner as well. So hope you continue to be on the mend there. And, I think maybe getting back to some semblance of normalcy here, doing this segment, maybe kind of get you back on track some to a degree. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about here quickly. We got a handful of games we're going to discuss, got a fade and follow, and a few regression candidates as well. And let's go ahead and dive right in. And let's start with the fade and follow, because you've got a couple of very interesting teams here, one on the fade side, one on the follow side. And as our listeners know, we like to try to end with the glass half full. So we'll start with the fade team here first.
The fade team is Portland in the WCC. Look, this team's been getting blasted game in and game out. Then they go to double overtime in their last game against San Diego, and they lose. This is a really bad Portland team. You wonder how much longer Porter is going to be there. When he came in, there was so much promise that things would improve. It hasn't happened. Portland really doesn't have much to play for now. I think this is a really bad team that's likely to mail it in here the rest of the season. They tried really hard in their last game and came up short. If you look at their games right before that, they were getting blasted game in and game out. I would not want anything to do with Portland here the rest of the regular season.
Well, and that's an important thing to think about here, too. I mean, Portland's got 5 regular season games left in the conference. Then they've got the conference tournament, obviously. And we're getting to that time. We're not quite there yet in most of these leagues, but we will, as the month goes along here, get to a point where teams do kind of mail in the rest of the season. They look ahead to that one shot they have in the conference tournament. Sometimes the teams don't even care about that, but motivation will start becoming a factor here in college basketball, probably in about 2 weeks' time or so, I would say.
Yeah, I think probably a week or two that will happen consistently across the board. I think Portland's a specific case in that, they really are a bad team to start with. They're coming off a really discouraging loss, and they have nothing to play for at this point. Even if they do have something to play for, they're likely going to lose pretty badly in several of these games coming up. So I think that coming off that spot, especially here in the short term, I could see Portland getting blown out here once again.
Well, we haven't talked much about the Fun Belt in college basketball here so far, but we get a chance to do so here with a follow team that you're looking at. And in fact, before we started recording, you and I were talking a lot about one of their games here coming up this week.
Yeah, Texas State, the Bobcats. First of all, I think they're a really well-coached team. They're consistently a good team. They force a lot of turnovers. This year, they've not turned it over that much. They give up a lot of second chance points, and that's hurt them. They've had some very close losses. You look at their 3-point loss to Georgia Southern, 4-point loss at Little Rock, close loss at home against Troy, 2-point loss against UT Arlington, 3-point loss against App State. So this is a team that's actually won by quite a few points in several of their wins and has lost some really close games. That usually evens out a bit. And they have an interesting matchup coming up here against Little Rock on Thursday. Little Rock's been the best team in the Sun Belt so far this year, but Little Rock's one really big Achilles heel is the fact that they turn the ball over consistently on offense. I think it's likely that in that game, Texas State will be favored there. Hopefully it'll be a short number and we might be able to lay the points here. But I think that Texas State could be a good team to back here the rest of the way. I think they're a little bit better than they've shown so far this year. They've got a good bench, pretty experienced team, well coached. I like them here the rest of the way in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, that Little Rock team, that game on Thursday night, by the way, Little Rock, 338th in the country in turnover percentage on offense. They do turn it over a lot. And like you said, some close losses here for Texas State. And, we talk about this all the time, too. In particular, we talk about it with Conference USA and that UTSA UTEP trip. That loss for Texas State to Appalachian State on Saturday might look bad to a lot of people, But that Coastal Carolina App State swing is very tough, particularly for the Texas teams in the Sun Belt, because App State is at elevation. I don't think people really realize that quick Thursday to Saturday turnaround, that's not that bad of a loss for Texas State. And maybe it does give us a cheaper price on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the game against App State, because I was looking at the box score here right as you were talking, and Texas State was up by 18 points in that game, just completely fell apart at the end of the game, which kind of plays into what we've talked about this spot. It's really a difficult spot. The other thing that really strikes me about this game is Texas State had 2 free throws in that game. App State had 21 free throws. So, I didn't watch the game. I don't know, but I mean, that's certainly curious that one team would have 2 free throws, the other team would have 21, and then Texas State loses by 3 points. So definitely looks like it could be a good buy low spot for Texas State.
And of course, we'll see what that number comes out at. But for our listeners out there, keep that one in mind for Thursday night there between Little Rock and Texas State. We'll look at a few regression candidates here, and these are ones that I kind of took a look at here this morning. And Wright State is the first one for me. On the year, they're shooting 36.4% from 3, but 42.9% in Horizon League play. Now, I know the Horizon League is not good. In particular, it's not a good defensive conference at all, but can Wright State really keep that up?
You wouldn't think so. I mean, Wright State's definitely a quality team. They're 21-5 this year. I think it says more about the Horizon League than anything else. It's definitely a conference that's down quite a bit this year. Wright State is not usually thought of as a team that's great on offense. They've been better on defense than most teams in the Horizon League here for a while. Scott Nagy's a really good coach, and he's done a good job there with Wright State. I don't think they can keep shooting that kind of percentage, and I think what that would make me worry about is laying big numbers with them here down the stretch. We are going to be laying big numbers with them if you want to bet them against UIC, IUPUI, even at Cleveland State, games like that. So I would be a bit careful with Wright State. I would think that they will continue to play well, but covering a big number could be difficult when you expect, that 43% number is going to come down a bit.
Yeah, last year in Horizon League play, they shot 31.3% from 3 in conference play. That was 10th. Now all of a sudden, much, much different here this year. So maybe Wright State, some unders, maybe going against them, in a big favorite role, something like that, could make a lot of sense here. We talked about one Texas team in Texas State. Let's talk about one down in Conference USA here, North Texas, where, Conference USA, I think, is a very difficult conference to handicap this year. We're also now getting to the point where they reset that conference play schedule. One of the things they incorporated, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, where they only show the first half of the conference schedule. They see where the teams are, then they kind of pair them up together. Conference USA is weird in general, but North Texas, very weird this year. Last year, 294th in the country in three-point percentage. This year, they're at 39% and over 41% in conference play.
Yeah, North Texas is a bit of a unique case, in my opinion. I think that Grant McCasland is a very good coach. This team was badly injured last year. They fell apart at the end of the year, lost, 6 or 8 games in a row in the regular season, partially because they had nobody healthy. North Texas has James Reese that transferred over from, I believe it was Buffalo, and he's been a very good outside shooter. Gibson is a good player. Hamlet's a good player. And I know they have DJ Draper, who's shooting 55.1% from long range. You wouldn't think he could keep shooting that. But in general, I do think North Texas is a good offensive team. Not quite as good as they look right now, obviously. It's hard to average 1.153 points per possession going forward as they are right now. But I do think North Texas is a very quality team who will be a tough out in the Conference USA tournament.
Well, it's something else that's interesting. Over on Bart Torvik's website, if you go to the specific conference pages, you can see here that so far North Texas has played the weakest strength of schedule in the conference, 14th out of the 14 teams. They played Western Kentucky once. They played Louisiana Tech once. And as that schedule resets, they put the good teams against the good teams for the most part. They put the bad teams against the bad teams, trying to strengthen their conference profile for the NCAA tournament. So North Texas will play a much tougher back part of the Conference USA schedule here. So maybe something of a regression candidate if that comes to fruition?
Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. I think North Texas is a team that I'm not anxious to go against, like I said, because I think they're a really well coached team, a deep team. At the same time, like you said, they're going to be playing better teams. Certainly, you're going to be playing Western Kentucky. You're going to be playing Louisiana Tech. In general, the Conference USA is down a good amount. Old Dominion's not nearly as good as they've been in past years. UTSA has not been what they should be. I still think UTSA might be a good buy low team, but in general, I think Conference USA is down quite a bit.
Well, I hate to do this to you while you're already in pain, but we're going to talk Ivy League for a second here. I know it's going to feel like I'm sitting on your surgically repaired knee here for a minute, but the Penn Quakers are fascinating to me. They are shooting 31.2% from three, 280th in the nation. In their 6 Ivy League games, they're shooting 24.4% from three and over 56% from two. But they take a lot of threes. They're 62nd in the nation in three-point rate. However, that's down 6% now in Ivy League play, or down about 6.5% in Ivy League play. So it seems like maybe they've finally realized, hey, we're not very good at shooting threes. We should kind of stop doing that as often.
Yeah, I mean, I think Penn's a good team. They lost their first couple games in the Ivy League to Princeton. Now they've won 4 in a row, including a nice win over Harvard. I think Penn is one of those teams that has played a tough schedule non-conference, at least compared to what Ivy League teams usually do. I think Penn is a team that I'd rather buy than sell at this point. This is a team where they play good defense. Penn has been known for playing good defense. Now, like you said, they're shooting such a good percentage from 2-point range. They don't really need to shoot those threes. At the same point, I can't imagine they keep shooting 24% from 3-point range like they have so far in the Ivy League. So Penn is a team that I would rather buy than sell at this point, definitely.
Yeah, maybe Penn kind of falls into that follow category. Maybe that's one we'll have to keep an eye on here with those Friday, Saturday back-to-backs out there in the Ivy League. One more that I wanted to touch on, and this isn't a regression candidate or anything, but this Akron and Eastern Michigan box score from over the weekend kind of piqued my interest here a little bit. Eastern Michigan, also an awful shooting team in conference play, by the way, particularly from three. But they lost 59-58 to Akron over the weekend. They had 38 free throw attempts. They had 38 field goal attempts. They made more field goals, 19, than they made free throws, 18, and lost the game by 1. So they were 18 of 38 from the free throw line and found a way to lose by a point. What a debacle. What a disaster.
Yeah, that game was on my radar the other day because I actually took Akron -1.5 small live when I saw they were losing by, 13 or something like that in the first half. Akron just laid waste to Eastern Michigan earlier this year. Akron looked like they didn't care at all about that game the other day. They were not motivated. Fortunate to win in general, and then of course they win by 1 point. But Eastern Michigan to me is one of those teams that they want to make the game really ugly. They can't play a high scoring game and try to get up and down with you because they're not good enough on offense. So they really want to slow the game down with that zone defense, muck it up. They were able to do that against Akron, and Akron. It looks pretty bad on you if you almost lose to a team that was 18 for 38 from the free throw line. Except at the same time, they were 17 for 27 from 2-point range. Eastern Michigan was. So just a wild game. And as I said to you earlier, I think the MAC is pretty bad here in college basketball this year. Certainly not on the level of MAC college football bad so far this year, but we don't have any really good team from this conference like we've had the past few years in Buffalo.
Yeah, and it's weird too because you look right now at Torvik's website, and Akron's the number one team here in the MAC, and boy, they really haven't played like it. They were a big favorite in that game against Buffalo. They lose that game. They lose by a point at Penn State in the rivalry game. Then they have 8 days off to play Eastern Michigan. They come out looking like that. That's not a real good look for them. Bowling Green's been very good, but they're not highly rated here by Torvik. So this conference just, and it's always interesting. I mean, the MAC conference tournament, we talk about this year in and year out, and we're really not that far away from talking about it again, about a month or so away probably. that conference tournament gets real weird, and obviously this year it could be extremely weird.
Yeah, it could be very weird. I wouldn't even know who I'd want to back in the MAC conference tournament at this point. I think Bowling Green is probably a team that I would expect to be pretty consistent, but their level can never be terribly high. Nobody is really that good here. Akron is probably as good as anybody, but we've seen that they're not really that great either. So definitely wide open.
All right, so we take a look at a few games here for this week, and we start on Tuesday night with one that you sent over to me that you wanted to touch on. Penn State and Purdue, a good one here in the Big Ten. These two teams, pretty evenly rated, probably going to have a fairly short line here for Purdue. What's on your mind about this game on Tuesday night?
There's a couple things about this game that I think are pretty interesting. Number one is Penn State has bucked this trend of home teams winning every single game in the Big Ten. I know it's not going to the same degree that it was earlier this year, but Penn State, I've been really impressed with them. I think Pat Chambers is certainly underrated as a coach. The fact that they could be 18-5 this year, have some really nice road wins, and I mean they lost quite a bit from last year. So this is a Penn State team last year that went 14-18, and now they're 18-5, even though they lost what most people thought was their best defender from last year in Reeves. This is a Penn State team that has really impressed me a lot. Obviously, that win at Michigan State was very impressive. They also won at Michigan. To me, Penn State is a team that is pretty dangerous. Now, if you look at Purdue has been much better at home than they have on the road. I don't have the splits in front of me. Maybe you can find the splits on Bart Torvik's site, but I know that Purdue's offense has been much better at home than they've been on the road. Purdue is a team where, on the road games, they've usually had to either try to win a really low-scoring game, slop it up, or they have lost pretty badly on the road a few times. That 63-37 loss at Illinois stands out in my mind, as does the loss to Rutgers. At the same time, Purdue has played really well at home. Their offense has been far better at home. They've shown signs of playing a bit quicker. I think this could be a good low over. I think Penn State as a team that wants to push the pace as much as anybody in the Big Ten. They're second in tempo in the Big Ten right now. They're second in offensive efficiency. I think Purdue has to score some points here if they're going to win this game. So I think, if we get a low 130s, 131, 131.5 here for a total, this could be a good over.
Yeah, we look at Purdue here. In their 12 home games, they're actually number one in the country, according to Bart Torvik, in adjusted offensive efficiency. They're 36th in effective field goal percentage and 10th in three-point percentage. Again, this is a survey of all 353 teams at home. Purdue number one in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency. In their 12 games in road or neutral settings, they are 190th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, 342nd in effective field goal percentage offense, 315th at 28.6% in three-point percentage. You will not have a bigger home road split offensively than what we see with Purdue.
No, I mean, that's really, truly amazing, especially from a team that really is a pretty good team. It's hard to imagine them being that bad on the road. At the same time, Penn State's a really good offensive team, a decent defensive team, but I don't think that they can just shut down Purdue. Purdue should be able to score here. I think that this is one of the totals that will likely get bet up. So if you like the over here, I think you probably want to play it early on. And also, I think this is a good game as far as from a side standpoint. Purdue's been very good at home. Penn State really rolling along here nicely. I don't think I have any real strong lean here on the side, but I do think this should be a good game and might be a little bit higher scoring than some people think.
We take a look at another game here on Tuesday night, and this is Rhode Island and Dayton out in the A-10. And I think at this point in time, I think we can safely say that Rhode Island is the second best team here in the A-10. They're 10-1 now. They swept the season series with VCU. Their only loss was to Richmond. That was a home loss. Came off of the rivalry game against Brown that they lost by 10. So maybe a little bit of a hangover there in that one. Dayton, again, over the weekend, struggling with St. Louis. They did win the game, but that was a St. Louis team that took them to overtime earlier on this year. First meeting between Rhode Island and Dayton here. Are the Flyers on upset alert at home?
Yeah, I mean, I like Dayton a lot as a team. I think Dayton's a very dangerous team and a team that nobody's going to want to play in the NCAA tournament, especially with a guy like Obi Toppin. It was going to be a mismatch for just about anybody. They also have some good outside shooters. Dayton just shoots the ball extremely well, 62.6% from 2-point range so far this year. I do think this is a bit of a dangerous spot here because Rhode Island still hasn't gotten the fanfare that a lot of teams would that are 18-5 on the year. So the Rams, is Dayton going to be up for this game? You would think they should be, based on the fact that Rhode Island has been so good here in the Atlantic 10. Rhode Island's 10-1, Dayton's 10-0 in the conference. So if Dayton drops a game like this, obviously they'd be tied. I think in the loss column, at least, I think that to me, Dayton is clearly the best team here, but Dayton's going to be laying a pretty good price. So if you want to look at Rhode Island plus the points, maybe you get 9 or 9.5 points or something like that. I assume we wouldn't quite get double digits here, but I think Rhode Island could be worth a good look. I think that, Rhode Island defensively has been very impressive this year. In the conference, 0.906 points per possession allowed. They're not fouling at all. It really has helped them that they're able to be so good at 3-point defense and they don't foul much at all. So I think this is a Rhode Island team that could give Dayton some trouble. I think Dayton will probably win this game, but I would lean toward Rhode Island plus the points. And I just want to say that since you brought up Rhode Island, we have to just say that, Fats Russell, best name in college basketball, and he's been very good for this Rhode Island team so far this year.
Fats Russell is definitely on the all-name team. There's no doubt about that. Speaking of all-name teams, I know we haven't talked as much here lately, but did you see that Wyoming signed a quarterback named Buck Coors? How awesome is that? Buck Coors.
That's amazing. I did see that. It kind of made my day when I saw that. Actually, that'll be a good one to talk about.
One other quick thing here. It's kind of interesting. Obi Toppin's younger brother, Jacob, plays for Rhode Island. So that's kind of an interesting little side plot here to this game here coming up. But one other thing about Dayton, and shame on me for not putting this game in my situational article. They come off the Rhode Island game at home. Dayton plays at UMass on Saturday, where they're going to lay a monster road number. They're at VCU in the next game. And Dayton and VCU is a rivalry. The Dayton fan base loathes VCU. So I don't know if it's necessarily a two-way street, but I've got some Dayton people in my Twitter timeline. They do not like VCU. That spot on Saturday, they're not going to lose to UMass, but I don't know if they're going to be fully invested and engaged in covering that number. So Saturday betting against the Flyers may make some sense there on the road at UMass. We move ahead to Wednesday here, and we take a look at a pretty interesting game, Alabama and Auburn. And we're getting a lot of these revenge spots now, these rematch types of games here in conference play. Alabama embarrassed Auburn in Tuscaloosa by 19 earlier on this year, 83-64. Auburn got blown out the next game by Florida. I think they lost that game by 22. They haven't lost since, but they played 3 overtime games, including a double overtime game against Ole Miss. So Auburn spending a lot of energy here of late, but you got to think they get up for this one.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of this one. I have to be honest. I hope you have a stronger opinion on it than I do. Auburn, I mean, what do you make of them? How have they won all these games in overtime? I mean, some of these games that they've been winning, their chance of winning these games was almost nothing. And they come back and win in epic form. You think they can't keep getting so fortunate. I mean, at the same time, I don't want to go against them in this game because they were absolutely blasted by Alabama in the first one. So I don't know what to think of this game. I think that Auburn at 21-2 is certainly not nearly as good as their record would indicate. Sorry, Auburn fans, but I think Auburn's a good team, but certainly not a team that is nearly as good as their record would indicate. You can't keep winning games the way that they've been winning all year and it not come back to bite you at some point. They're going to have to either play better or they're not going to win as many games. And I think that this Alabama team is a bit of a question mark. I think Nate Oates has clearly done a good job with this team. It's his first year. They've had quite a bit of injuries. Both teams want to push pace here. I assume we get a pretty high-scoring game. And I would note that the first game between these two was only 83-64, but it was 84 possessions in that game. So some really bad shooting numbers in that game. So if you like the over, don't be too scared away from the fact that they only scored 147 in the first game.
Yeah, I think Alabama's kind of tough to figure out. I mean, obviously it's a team that's got a high ceiling. I mean, as we saw with blowing out Auburn, at the same time, they're only 5-5 here in conference play. Now they do have a double overtime loss to Florida, but also just gave up 105 points to or 102 points to Georgia in an overtime win. So I think Alabama is just one of those very high variance teams. And I feel like at this time of the year in college basketball, we probably don't need to gamble on those as much.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Bama is a pretty big unknown. I think that their program in general is going in the right direction, but we don't know what to make of them right now. I just think that Auburn is a team that I hate to lay too many points with. So I don't think I'll be betting this game, but certainly could be an interesting game there, especially since there's certainly no love lost between them.
All right, so we take a look at one more game here for this week. And definitely great to get you back on the show here, Kyle. It's been awesome to chat with you once again. But Creighton and Seton Hall. Seton Hall just beat Villanova on the road for the first time since 1994. They have a 3-game lead now in the Big East, and they take on a Creighton team that, Creighton, obviously, with their dependence on jump shooting, they're certainly a team that you'd much rather take at home than on the road. Away from home, they're only 5-5 straight up on the year, 12-1 at home. So not an ideal situation for Creighton going on the road, but you won't find a worse spot for a team at home than this one for Seton Hall.
I don't know what to do with this game. I think that Seton Hall is a team that everybody at this point realizes that this is going to be a really dangerous team. I mean, who's going to want to play Seton Hall in the big dance? If you look at, them defensively, Quincy McKnight's been really good defensively. Miles Powell can take over any game. We all know that. And then Mamu Kulashvili is back. Having a big guy down there, 6'11", very skilled big man. Seton Hall is not a team I'd want to play. This is a very dangerous team. At the same time, this is not a great spot for them. You're playing a Creighton team that really doesn't have anything to lose. Creighton shoots a lot from outside, like you mentioned. I don't know that I'd be invested in this game. I do think Seton Hall could be a team that, I've heard other people say it. It's probably not a great value at this point because it's been so popular. But, maybe some futures on Seton Hall make some sense because they look like a team that has enough to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. I know they haven't really been there before, and their coaching staff hasn't really proven it. But at the same time, I mean, it's wide open this year. I mean, who is really the clear favorite to win it all in the NCAA tournament? I don't think there's anybody that really stands out.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's a very difficult spot for Seton Hall. Again, obviously there are reasons to be worried about Creighton. If Creighton shoots well, I mean, they could very well knock off Seton Hall here in this one. But one other game I just want to touch on really briefly here, just because we're going to get some of these games now as we go forward. Montana and Weber State play each other here this week on Thursday night. And for those that don't know, massive rivalry game in the Big Sky. Not that it's necessarily a geographic thing, but just that those two teams for so many years in a row kind of fought it out for the top spot here. Now, Montana's down a little bit. Weber State is down quite a bit, but these Super Bowl types of games, particularly in these low major conferences, these are going to be popping up now a lot throughout the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, I think the one of the things that's most interesting about spots like this is the thing that you like to bring up a lot. The game after it could be really dangerous for these teams. So Weber State, a team that's way, way down. Jarrett Harding's a good player for them, but they don't really have good other options. And I know they've had several key injuries this year. So, this is a Weber State team that is a bit healthier than they were for a while now that Cam Davis is back. I think Weber State plus the points would be my lean against Montana here. Like I said, I think it could be interesting to see what happens in this game because then Montana plays Idaho State in the next game, a game that they could easily overlook depending on how that game before goes, especially because they play Montana State the game after that. So, and Weber State, if they put a big effort into this one and come up just short, they might be a good fade also against Montana State on Saturday.
Yeah, actually, Weber State won the first meeting they did win that one at home, 87-85 in overtime. So a big win there for Weber State. Montana with the revenge angle here. Again, these things are definitely things that you want to look at, particularly in these low major conferences here as we go throughout the rest of the regular season. But professional handicapper Kyle Hunter, you can find his work over at huntersportspicks.com and also bettersportspicks.com. What's going on over at those sites right now, man?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't plan any great speech or anything about what's going on at the sites. Like I said, I'm a little bit off of my normal, what I've been here of late, but starting to get things back to normal a little bit. Like I said, I've been on a good run here of late with my plays. Really good weekend. Hope to keep that going. You can go over to bettersportspicks.com. Check out the free members area where I'm going to be posting things like free first half plays, free live betting ideas. I'll also put some of my leans there that didn't quite make my premium card. I know that a lot of people have asked about that. I'm going to start putting some of those there. So you can go sign up for that, bettersportspicks.com. You can also go over to huntersportspicks.com, have my premium selections up. I'll be lowering the prices here for the all basketball season pass here as we near March. It's really not that far away. So we'll lower the prices a bit here as we go forward.
Yeah, and as we look tomorrow, the first conference tournament's 3 weeks away on March 3rd.
Wow.
So the season flying by here, to say the least. But great to get Kyle Hunter from huntersportspicks.com and bettersportspicks.com back on the program here at Kyle Hunter Picks on Twitter. Kyle, great to chat with you, man. Hope you're feeling better, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, man. Take care.